Hello and welcome. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. As we enter election season, here's an interesting question. Do women voters vote differently if there are more women candidates? Well, that's a gamble that Priyanka Gandhi Vadra seems to have taken in Uttar Pradesh. The Congress General Secretary is trying to occupy the headlines once again in the poll bound state. And let's bring you the key developments in this debate around women's political representation. 40% of all tickets will be kept aside for female candidates in Uttar Pradesh. This was the announcement from Priyanka Gandhi Vadra on one of her recent tours to Uttar Pradesh. The Trinamool Congress turned around and said, "Copycat Congress, we did this before you. In fact, we were the first party to do this," said Mamata Banerjee's TMC. As the TMC and the Congress argue amongst themselves, political pundits have pointed out that this announcement has in fact come in a state where the Congress has a very little skin in the game. Is that why women candidates are being treated as well, dispensable because the Congress has nothing to lose? And the larger question remains around how to bring more women in politics. Many people who oppose reservation have suggested ticket distribution is the stage at which a greater diversity can be attempted. The larger political question, of course, is whether this will be a game changer. Remember, the Prime Minister has also courted women voters, but through economic schemes like the Ujjwala scheme. To discuss all of this, let's bring up a very interesting panel on the program today. We're joined by Radhika Khera, leader of the Congress Party. Welcome, Radhika. Yashwant Deshmukh, who's of course one of our best-known psephologists and political pundits, among the first to welcome Priyanka Gandhi's announcement and say, "Hey, why didn't you do this in Punjab, Uttarakhand, where the Congress has much more skin in the game, could maybe even win those states?" Sushmita Dev is now with the Trinamool Congress, one of the most prominent faces of women in politics. Welcome, Sushmita. Great to have you on the program. And Shubhrastha. Shubhrastha is a columnist, a political analyst, and has her own YouTube channel. Welcome, Shubhrastha. Welcome, everybody. So let me start with you, if I can, Shubhrastha. We'll get to the Congress later. The Congress will talk about why they think this is a game changer. But you spent a lot of time in Uttar Pradesh the last few months. One of the interesting things that the data tells us is that a higher percentage of women turned out to vote in 2017 than a percentage of men. Do you think that when an announcement like this comes, it could change how women voters respond? It could change the fortunes of a moribund Congress party? Shubhrastha?
Yes. Hi, Burke. I didn't know that I would be the introductory speaker, but see, I think there are two questions that we need to address here. One is the larger question of reservation, and if reservations are a way forward, and this is to be seen in context of reservation for the depressed classes, reservation for women, reservation in general. And I think I have a pretty, if I may say, controversial stand here because nobody really takes up this position. I don't believe that reservations in the long run really solve an issue. And when I say this, I concur with Dakshayani Velayudhan, the first and the only Dalit woman in the Constituent Assembly who stood up against Ambedkar and took a stand against reservations. The second question is the more political and in the present question on reservation, and I think it should be a welcome move because empirically, if we look at reports done by policy analysts or Shamika Ravi has done a fantastic work around this, and so have many more. And it has really proven that if women are at the helm of power and if they are given the mandate to sort of decide policies, have done a far better job than men. But we also have policy reports and reports on representation which go on to say that women in positions of power at the grassroots level, at the panchayat level, most of the time, and this is again very empirical and nothing to do with philosophical or sociological analysis, that most of the time they have been stooges of male politicians. In fact, a couple of years ago, Sushmita ji and I shared a panel where Sushmita ji emphatically agreed with the idea of reservations and I did not. And I think I had a point there, and I think I would want to stress upon this point and say it's not easy for women in politics. Look at what happened to a candidate like her, for instance. She has been a part of the Congress ecosystem for a very long time, but she, and I don't want to go into the details of it. I'm sure she has her own take on why she decided to join the TMC after having served in Assam, her father also having all that legacy. But I think it's only women like Sushmita Dev ji who will benefit from reservation, and not really people who need
Okay,
reservation at the most. For all
can I ask you something more basic? Do you see
sure, sure.
do you see diversity at the ticket distribution level as reservation? Because reservation could be what when we reserve seats in parliament, but just giving more women the chance to contest elections, do you see that as reservation, Shubhrastha?
Yes, I do, because that was a term used by Priyanka Vadra when she addressed the press conference. She didn't talk about the winnability of women candidates. She did not talk about giving women candidates a seat at the table at the Congress, headquarters. It was a very specific way in which she was talking about reservations to be given. She was talking about 40% ticket distribution, and Yashwant ji is very right when he says that when they have a policy, when a decent policy and a public mandate in places like Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh and so on and so forth, why didn't they, use the same, fantastic policy there? And the second point is, Barkha, in this debate, hopefully, I'm sure you will not allow this to happen. I don't want to get into a whataboutery mode, that, okay, look at the condition of women in MP and look at the condition of women in UP and all of that. We all know gender disparity is a reality. We all know it is extremely difficult for women, even for women in media for that matter, Barkha, to really rise up the corporate ladder and make a space for ourselves. Is really reservation the way forward, or we need more quality women talking about quality of representation than mere numbers?
And yeah, I agree. I don't think this is necessarily a competitive or should be a competitive conversation. But as I take this to Radhika Khera, it is inevitable in election season. The Congress has also timed it to an election that is coming up. That it has made it a UP specific announcement. Radhika, everybody would welcome this in principle, but I think Yashwant was among the first to raise the valid question: why was this announcement not made in states like Punjab, in Uttarakhand, or let's say even in Rajasthan or Chhattisgarh, states where the Congress does have skin in the game? Why make it in a state where the Congress also knows that its own political fortunes are so, in a sense, dire that you can actually afford to experiment and send token women candidates into the field? Radhika.
See, Barkha, the entire country is aware of the condition of women in Uttar Pradesh, and it is high time that women come out stronger and they have a say for everything in Uttar Pradesh. We've seen if a woman is raped in Uttar Pradesh, even if her father goes out to complain, he's killed. That is the sad condition of women in Uttar Pradesh. They do not have a voice, and we need to strengthen the women of Uttar Pradesh, and that is much needed. In fact, has been needed for a very long time, and Congress has forever been raising, we have given the country the first woman prime minister, the first woman president, the first woman Lok Sabha speaker. In fact, our party president is also a woman. So we have always advocated women running the country and taking charge, and Uttar Pradesh is a state which actually needs the women to come out and have their voices be heard. And
why not other states as well? Why not other states as well?
Well, that's open for other states also, and I'm a living example in front of you. I come from Delhi. I've contested from Delhi, and Congress was the only party in Delhi also which gave the maximum tickets to women candidates. We've been doing that forever, so it's not a first time for the Congress. And we have also been requesting, we have a government today in power, and reservation is very, very important, because people whose voice.
Okay, I don't know where Radhika just suddenly went. Radhika, are you there? I think we suddenly lost Radhika. So let me just bring Shubhrastha in to respond to what Radhika said, and then we'll go to Sushmita. Shubhrastha, go ahead.
Then I can't.
Yeah.
Barkha, two very quick points. See, this entire conversation about we gave India the first woman prime minister is pretty bogus. For the simple reason that for me, and personally for a woman like me, I think it's important to understand what do women do when they are at the position of power. Was Indira Gandhi even ready to share a dais with somebody as firebrand as Tarkeshwari Sinha? I come from Nalanda. I'm very proud of the fact that Tarkeshwari Sinha represented Nalanda as a constituency in the Lok Sabha when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. She was so insecure with this rising gun from Bihar that she did not even allow her speeches to be aired and we all know the kind of rivalry that went on. It's very easy to talk about the fact that, well, I contested elections on Congress ticket and all of that. I mean, there are so many women leaders out there in Congress who have left the Congress party precisely because of the misogyny and the kind of anti-women activity the party has engaged in. So it is pretty rich to, come up with those conversations. And, which is where I think then people start drawing parallels with the other political party, which is in power today. And that's when you begin to see what has been done to women.
I want to actually go through the numbers with Yashwant in a moment from now. Two sets of numbers: how women vote. Do we have any patterns? And two, is this doing anything for how Priyanka Gandhi is being perceived on the ground? But Radhika, I must allow you to complete your point. Do briefly complete your point, and then I'll go to Yashwant. Yeah.
See, we are not a party that does mere lip service. We have a government in power today, which you call a Prachand Bahumat, a Prachand Bahumat, which we haven't seen in many, many years. And they are still sitting over the 33% women reservation bill. What is stopping them from passing that? No one knows. They pass every bill they want. They run the parliament the way they want. They pass bills, no questions asked. But they are sitting on that. They have just come up with the slogan Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and we've seen how women are treated in their own rule states, whether it's Haryana, where this slogan was coined. So now I will come back to Uttar Pradesh. Why is it important in Uttar Pradesh? Again, women in Uttar Pradesh do not have the kind of voice that maybe a woman in Delhi would have, or even Chhattisgarh or Jaipur for that matter. I will repeat again, the condition of women in Uttar Pradesh is far worse than
but
many
surely you can't make a case saying you've only brought this in Uttar Pradesh because of the law and order situation.
Of course not. I said
Pradesh.
even in a place like Delhi, Congress was the only party.
Okay. Shubhrastha has a two-finger 30-second by the clock intervention because I have to go to Yashwant and Sushmita is back as well. Yeah, Shubhrastha.
Parties like the RJD, the AIMIM, the Samajwadi Party, these are parties who support the Congress. JDU also, ideologically, Congress feels a little comfortable with JDU than any other party in Bihar. These are parties who oppose the women reservation bill, madam. So what are you talking about? You need to get a consensus from the opposition camp first.
Okay, hang on. Okay, Radhika, just hold your fire for a few minutes. Let's get Sushmita and Yashwant into this conversation. Sushmita, Yashwant, with your permission, I'll just get you, Sushmita, to respond, and then I'll come to you on the numbers and the Priyanka Gandhi perception battle that is on. Sushmita, you spent years in the Congress. You're now in the Trinamool. Both parties in your time have been led by women, which is a kind of interesting point to underline. I'm just wondering if you look at politics through the prism of gender, because you're also the daughter of a politician. Your father was a politician. So is this gendered for you? Are you convinced of the efficacy of ticket distribution? And what do you make of the Congress deciding to do this only in Uttar Pradesh?
See, first of all, to give women tickets is an internal battle for every party. We can keep saying whatever we want to each other. And what stands testimony to that is so many decades after independence, the number of women in the parliament and in the assembly is dismal. So it is a given that it's a challenge to bring more and more women into, electoral politics. There are various reasons for it. It can be capacity building. It can be other things. And these exist for men also, but it's far more grave when it comes to women. Now, if a political party wants, there's nothing stopping a political party from giving more and more women tickets and getting them to the point of winnability. If you say winnability is a criteria and you don't have women who are in a position to win, that is also a party's fault, is what I think. Now, coming to Uttar Pradesh, I think what Priyanka Gandhi ji has done by announcing 40% tickets to women, no doubt, I mean, it's a very bold and a big step. And like we've said that Mamata Banerjee did it in the last election, Lok Sabha election, and 40% women were given tickets, 17 women, 12 are in parliament. Now the question is that why is the BJP not bringing in the reservation bill? And let me explain why. A political party can keep giving reservation internally, but unless a seat is reserved for women, you cannot ensure that irrespective of which party wins, a woman goes into parliament. That's where
why can't women compete against men? The question will be asked in unreserved open general seats.
Of course they can. Why can't they? There's nothing stopping them. That's why I said you need the impetus at two levels. One internally at the party level and two at the legislative level. I mean, I've heard this argument saying, "Oh, we don't need reservation and only entitled women will come in." But let me tell you something, that's a very lame excuse. Affirmative action is about undoing what we couldn't do socially. That's affirmative action. If anybody can say it applies to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, there is no reason why it should not allow to women. And if it's a gender centric view, doesn't matter which family she comes from and which caste she comes from and what kind of a background she comes from, she represents a gender and she deserves to be in parliament or Lok Sabha. Rest is
Okay.
all petty arguments.
Okay, now let me take this to Yashwant and we'll come back to all three of you in a moment. Yashwant, two dimensions I want you to look at. One, we do know from the data that a higher percentage of women actually turned up to vote in UP in 2017 than men. This is statistical. But what do women vote for? Do women necessarily respond to more women candidates in a different way than they respond to male candidates? It's like saying younger people would have voted Rahul Gandhi over Modi. That did not happen. Voting is not such a simple sort of process. And the other question is, obviously Priyanka Gandhi in the last 10, 15 days has been trying to occupy the headlines in Uttar Pradesh. I'm wondering what this is doing, whether your trackers are showing that this is working, not working on the ground. So go ahead, Yashwant, it's over to you.
So, I mean, I would like to take politics, first part, I will take politics away from this very, very critical issue, Barkha, because, I mean, as a voter of India, as a citizen of India, this issue is very close to my heart. When I move around the world, look into the data, any naysayer to women reservation or women politics, I would just simply like them to look into the global indices on the governance and as well as the quality of life. So there is a no-brainer, Barkha. In the rankings, you will figure out the more participation of females in the elected democracy, the better quality of life those countries have, and better governance is in the indices they are performing on. So there is a direct empirical evidence of this thing, that the countries where bigger larger number of female representatives is there in the elected bodies, the governance is much better, number one. And when the governance is better, then the quality of life is certainly better. So there is no brainer in here. So obviously we need more female representation across the party line, and this issue has to be discussed, just like Shubhrastha said. It has to be taken beyond political partisan lines. I certainly welcome what Priyanka Gandhi has said or done in UP. My only concern is that if suppose, and Radhika, with all due respect, I have already welcomed your move, so don't take it as a political. Why I am scared of this move? That वो हिंदी में कहते हैं ना कि हारे हुए काम में अगर आपने लगा दिया तो it becomes a pointer to say, look what happened to Congress when they gave 40% seats to the women in UP. They still managed to end up only about 10 odd seats. I mean, something of that sort. I don't think, I'm not saying that is going to happen, but I'm just looking at the data and I'm looking at the scenario, and I feel Congress should have probably, done this across the board. And that would have given a huge
That's a
signal.
very, very interesting point, Yashwant, and I want you to make it more specific. You're basically saying that all polls show that the Congress is not going to do well in UP, and therefore people will find an excuse to link more women candidates with more electoral defeats.
Exactly. I mean, suppose if they don't manage to win, bigger number of seats, and nobody will say there 90% of male candidates also lost. But
Yeah.
what will happen is that it will become a really easy rallying point not to give women ticket, because see what happened to Congress in UP. So what I feel, that if
Yeah.
they do it in the states where they have a more winnability, they are in a direct stakeholder, it would drive home the point they are serious and good. This is a good thing to do, and it will also put pressure on other political parties to follow the suit. Now, coming to the point number two, Barka, there are two data points as far as the female participation in elections are concerned. That number one, that for almost 60 years, Barka, the male turnout was almost like 10 points ahead of the female turnout. That has got changed in the last 10 years. That is a huge shift, seismic shift in as far as the electoral democracy is concerned in India. So,
Yeah.
in the last 10 years, across the states, we have seen females almost matching up the male turnout or even outpacing the male turnout in many aspects. Number two, in our 25 years of research, we have tried to ask this question and see, are the females voting as their male counterparts in the family? Yes,
Yes.
for I mean till 2010, 2005 to 2010, it was actually happening. Males, the females were almost following the similar line, political line where males were voting. But in last 10 to 15 years, that has got completely changed, Barka. And we are seeing so very different voting behavior of the females, and that has also resulted in many of the sweeps, unprecedented sweeps which people were not
That's
expecting.
very interesting. That's very interesting, Yashwant. So you're saying your data actually shows you that women can and do vote differently now from men in their house, in their
Exactly.
households.
it's
Okay.
it's huge, and that thing, very interestingly and thankfully, Barka, that it generally comes to a bias that the better educated, higher educated, belonging to better family, economic backdrop, those kind of female are voting differently, but it's not. This phenomena is sweeping across the caste spectrum, across the education, across the income group. So, a low bottom of the pyramid, family female are as likely to vote in a different way as the top of the pyramid on the socioeconomic ladder.
Hold your points. I want to come back to your trackers later, but I want to take the 2 points you made around the panel. One, women do vote differently from men in their homes. That has started happening. Two, what the Congress has done in a state that it is forecast to do very dismally in is to link the idea of electoral defeat with the idea of greater women in politics, which is very, very dangerous for all of us who want to see more women in politics. Quick responses to this. Radhika, I'll start with you. I again say you can go on talking about the state of women in Uttar Pradesh or the law and order, but why not Punjab? Why not Goa? Why not Uttarakhand?
See, like I said, Congress has been a party which has always given maximum, mostly in most states, maximum number of women candidates we have fielded. And to जस्ट अ क्विक लाइन टू व्हाट यशवंत जी सेड कि लोग कहेंगे ऐसा, तो यशवंत जी कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे, लोगों का तो काम है कहना, और लोग क्या कहेंगे उसके डर से अगर हम महिलाओं को बाहर नहीं लेकर आए तो शुरुआत तो कभी ना कभी करनी है ना, ये तो हमेशा ही रहेगा.
नहीं,
सो
ये तो ये
वी
तो ये
हैव
तो
टू
ये तो
बिगिन
ये तो
वो
ठीक बात
हार
है
के
ये
डर
पर.
से.
नहीं, पर बाकी प्रदेशों में क्यों नहीं? बाकी जो मैंने तीन
Like I
प्रदेशों के
said, we
नाम
have
लिए
been
हैं
doing
उनमें
it
क्यों
in
नहीं?
all the states, Barkha. I've told you we did it in Delhi. Again, I will repeat, Congress was the only party which fielded maximum number of female candidates in
I
Delhi.
think
We have
Yashwant,
been
I
doing
think
it again
Yashwant,
and
Yashwant
again.
is going to react. Yashwant,
You see,
Yashwant.
We
I,
had a
I,
chief
I
minister in
Radhika,
Delhi
let
appreciate
him
for 15
respond.
years.
Radhika, I appreciate the fact that you gave more tickets in Delhi. I appreciate the fact that Sheila Dikshit ji, who doesn't love her? The way she was and the way she governed. What I'm simply trying to say, you never said 40% reservation for tickets for female in Delhi. It's a policy line. It's a very important milestone. Radhika, please understand the gravity of what you are trying to achieve or trying to do. If I'm only saying one thing, if you would have said that as a sweeping policy material across the state, or even if not across the state, at least two states, to
Yeah,
show your intent that okay, we are starting this, but we are not really starting this with
absolutely.
a lost cause like
Lost cause.
UP,
Yeah.
but with a state like maybe Goa. I mean, go ahead, give
Let
money
me.
for it, give
I think
anything.
I think that's a very good point. And Radhika, I know you want to respond, but I must get the others. Sushmita, I think the conversation is also somewhat complex in terms of also looking at what we now know. Yashwant's data tells us that there are women willing to vote differently from their male counterparts. We've had instances, Nitish Kumar in Bihar with his Cycles for Girls scheme, where a policy has swung the vote. And I must say that in UP, at least in the last Lok Sabha election, a number of women spoke to me about the Ujjwala scheme, the Prime Minister's Ujjwala scheme. I'm not saying it will last forever. I know Priyanka Gandhi took a swipe at it in a press conference, but I just want to understand from you and Shubhrastha and everybody else, what about economic schemes? Do you think economic schemes speak more to women who actually have the headache of and the responsibility of running homes and also juggling work than, let's say, just greater number of women candidates? Sushmita, I'll start with you.
You see, there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that the vote bank of the women has to be treated differently. I've said it in every meeting in the Congress party when I was there. And if you can cater to communities caste wise, there is absolutely no reason why a government or a manifesto should not target women as a separate vote bank, because women do have gender specific needs. And we have this tendency of saying women's security means everything to a woman. No, financial independence, education of the children, health is such a big issue, health infrastructure. So if there are policies which are women centric, there is no doubt about the fact that they will vote differently, even if their candidate or their whoever their candidate is standing in their constituency is a male, doesn't matter. But you are right, I totally agree that you have to cater to women as a separate vote bank, and that's what makes them vote. To think that if you give more women candidates, more women will vote for them is oversimplifying it.
I kind of
Oversimplifying it.
agree.
But
I do agree. Yeah.
having said that, if a party gives more and more women tickets, it speaks well for the party about how women are positioned in that party. And you see that the question that keeps coming, Barkha, that why not Punjab, why not Chhattisgarh, and states where the Congress party is winning, this question will come. It will come because it is bound to come, that why has it been experimented here. And another thing, Radhika, you should be prepared. You will have to also answer that, is Priyanka Gandhi ji going to walk the talk and stand herself after making 40% women stand in UP? Is Supriya Srinath, who was sitting next to her, is herself from Uttar Pradesh, is she also going to stand in UP? This is the next thing that's going to be asked of the Congress party. Because if you feel giving women tickets in UP is not to make them lose, then in that case, you should also stand. I mean, Aradhana Mishra will stand. She always stands. But this is going to be the next question you're going to face as a party.
I think that's a great question, and with Shubhrashtra's permission, I'll let Radhika briefly respond to it. Right? I think Priyanka Gandhi must then, as Sushmita says, walk the talk. Maybe run against Yogi. Maybe be the Congress's chief ministerial candidate. She could have announced at press conference by saying 40% tickets to women, and I'm one of those women who's going to contest. That also answers to some degree Yashwant's worry that it's a losing project, because then she's saying, even if it's an uphill task, I'm willing to lose, take that knock on my chin a few times and keep at it. And it would have made that perception that Yashwant Deshmukh pointed out very different, I think, if it had been coupled with an announcement of her running perhaps for chief minister. Radhika?
I have worked with Sushmita ma'am for many years, and she knows how the party works. Priyanka ji is the general secretary of the Congress party, and any general secretary in charge who goes to the state does not go and contest.
Sorry, Radhika, to put you in a spot.
No, ma'am. And any general secretary, be it of my party or even of the Trinamool Congress, and ma'am will also be taking charge of some state, I'm sure. And you do not go and start contesting from that state. She's in charge. She gave the country the roadmap of what the party has decided for Uttar Pradesh for Congress, that we have decided we are going to give 40% tickets to women, because of which we have even increased the date of filing, asking for a ticket by 1 month, and that is what we are going to adhere to. And I'm sure if Supriya ji wants to contest, she will. She has already contested for member of parliament
But
from
Radhika,
Uttar
with
Pradesh.
Radhika, with
Now,
respect, with respect, I know we don't want to be unfair to you because you
And
can't
also,
answer
let
for
me
these
just quickly
things that
complete,
you
Barkha,
can't
just 10
decide on.
seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
Just 10 seconds. And for example, let me just take it away from politics. Let's take it to the media. There is an editor output, there is an editor input. Now, the editor output and input is not going to go onto the field and start reporting. So, everybody has their own responsibilities
Not true. Not true.
decided.
If you're going
And
to
there
take the
may be
media
circumstances,
analogy, let,
there may
let
be
me let me let me
circumstances.
respond to it. You have brought up something from my field. Can we just come out of this for a second? You brought up something from my field, so let me answer it. It would be akin to my saying, I'm going to take on Times Now and Republic by doing more ground reporting, but sending only my junior most reporters who don't know how to report into the field instead of going into the field myself and saying, hey, even if we don't get the
No, no,
ratings,
I talk
कोई
about
कोई
the
बात नहीं,
editor.
मैं आपके
The
साथ हूँ.
editor
नहीं,
output and editor
I'm
input
just saying,
has a
I,
different
I
has a
understand, Radhika.
different
I know,
so
Radhika.
as a general secretary in charge, she is working with every worker, she is there with every worker, she is on the
Okay,
ground, she's
okay.
standing with
But
them
I
fighting.
do believe Sushmita raises a good point. I believe also it would have answered the skeptics who said UP is a losing project. Why is it being done here? Now let's come to the more interesting question to Shubhrastha and Yashwant. Do economic schemes, do targeted policies work more with women than simply more women candidates? Shubhrastha, I'll start with you.
Uh, Barkha, unfortunately, I haven't come across a policy paper that has really looked into this, or a report that has done this kind of study. But with whatever limited interactions I have had with women in the Northeast, in Bihar and UP on the ground, I can tell you that I completely agree with Yashwantji when he says that women voters have started voting differently. Otherwise, there is no point. There is no argument which explains the 2015 and 2010 elections in Bihar. Also, when Northeast was slowly sort of converting to the BJP or the saffron fold, so as to say, I think these were the women who were driving all kinds of changes at the ground level. In Manipur, the Meera Paibis led the movement, political movement for change, but they were not at the driving seat. And no political party, whether the BJP or the Congress or whatever regional, the number of regional parties that we have, none of them entrusted their women leadership to drive that change, despite the fact that women at the ground were rallying for more issues, political and sociological. I have a slight disagreement with Sushmita ji when she says that, when she makes the point about reservation, because she comes from a party which is led by a very substantial woman leadership. And I say that because I think among the parties, national and regional parties that we have today, Barkha, I think Mamata Banerjee's party is the only party where we see a lot of women leaders actually competing at the national level in a very constructive manner, jostling for space internally and externally. Unfortunately, we did not see that even with a leadership like Mayawati. We did not see that with a leadership like Jayalalitha. And for Congress, I really feel sorry for Radhika ji to be taking all these questions. But Radhika ji, you cannot brush things that have happened in history, things which are documented. There's a reason why I speak so passionately about Tarkeshwari Sinha. Indira Gandhi and Tarkeshwari ji were contemporaries. She was not even given a proper, she was a pass out from LSE who made to London School of Economics, not because her father had, contacts in London. She had a full funded scholarship, went to London, finished her education, and what was she relegated to in the Congress party? This is a historical legacy and a historical baggage that we are talking about.
Okay,
So the specific points that Sushmita ji raised about, Priyanka Gandhi going out in the field and contesting elections is a point that you need to take to your party leadership. It has nothing to
Absolutely,
do.
I agree with it, and I have to take last comments. But Yashwant, we need to spend 5 minutes with Yashwant, just looking at what his tracker is telling him. Yashwant, let's take it back to you. What is the chatter you're picking up on UP and policy vis-a-vis candidates? This is a very interesting thing. So sometimes issues, let's say the issue of prohibition became a huge talking point in Bihar. Before that, the education of girls and the distribution of cycles. I'm just picking up two examples that I know. In Delhi, the much beloved Sheila Dikshit, one of the reasons that she was seen to have lost that last election was what happened with the Nirbhaya gang rape. So sometimes gendered opinion, rallies around an issue or a policy more than how many women candidates there are. Yashwant, go ahead.
Well, Varka, sometimes the stereotyping works in a very strange ways. For example, general stereotype is that female are known to be more emotional, more sentimental types while taking decisions, right? And males are considered to be more rational, more on the dot, driven by the issues and blah 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 blah. But what my data shows, Barkha, is completely opposite. As far as voting intents are concerned, Barkha, I have figured out, and it's empirical. I can provide you hundreds and thousands of samples which we have collected and prove it empirically in that way. We have figured out that it's the male voters who are actually more swept away with the swing sentiment, with some issue of polarization or emotional attachment, rather than the female voters. Female voters, when we ask them whom did you vote or whom are you going to vote and what is the reason that you are going to vote that way, female voters, a huge majority, and again cutting across the spectrum of education and things, they vote largely on the real issues related with the governance, issues related with the structure of power, and including the power symbolism. I'm not saying that they don't vote for that, but broadly speaking, their concern remains economics, the good governance, the law and order, things which really, really matter to not just to them but to society at large. So it's kind of it might sound very strange to many of your viewers, because these are the stereotypings which by and large we have been
Very
raised
interesting.
around, and
Very interesting. And what are you picking up in UP in terms of this policy announcement creating any sort of buzz at all?
you see, in UP, big number of females at this point of time are still inclined towards the BJP at big, but largely because of the Prime Minister's government governance initiatives. So what you found when you were traveling in UP, the Ujjwala scheme and other schemes, and including law and order, Baka, we know we have seen some really ghastly things that have come out from UP, but somehow the encounters and other things, they have created a kind of an image of this government, and particularly the chief minister, who is hard on crime generally. But yes, there are some negative stories as well. I'm not going into the politics of that. I'm simply telling you how the females are perceiving or looking at the things right now. So when I look into this announcement, I would certainly keep a close eye, how females are reacting to this particular announcement, and whether giving 40% female candidates is going to swing a sizable section of the female voters towards the Congress or not. But at this point of time, I was just looking at the preferred chief ministerial name which come verbatim. I haven't seen much of a bump in Priyanka ji's number. It was roughly about 4% last month. It's roughly about 5.5% right now. So certainly there is a 1.5% jump, but it's ऐसा नहीं है कि उसके कारण बिल्कुल ही कुछ चमत्कार हो रहा, और maybe it is too early for me to
Yeah.
say. Maybe we
Yeah.
need to give couple of weeks to understand
To
what is
assess.
happening. But
Okay.
overall, females are voting on the real issues. Males are not voting on the real issues. Number one. Number two, females are voting more than the males right now. Number three, females are absolutely voting, taking their own mind, making your own mind, and taking their own things into their hand. They are not really following a typical patriarchal mindset that okay, पिताजी ने
Very
बोल दिया या
interesting.
पति ने बोल दिया या बेटे ने बोल दिया. That happened last time, I guess, that in my numbers, probably in 98, 99 kind of thing. Post that, I have seen majority of the elections, if they are decisive, one-way
Yeah.
traffic, then the
Well, I
biggest
think that
reason is the female voting in that sweep.
how interesting that women can actually, in that sense, flip an election, but not via emotion and identity issues alone, but on real policy issues that impact livelihoods and lives. We leave it there to Radhika, Sushmita, and Shubhrastha, and to Yashwant. Thank you. This is going to be a very interesting area to unpack. There can be nothing but the welcoming of more women in the electoral arena. More and more parties should do it, but that in itself will not be enough, because as we just established, the stereotype of women being more emotional and voting with their hearts and just responding to their gender doesn't quite hold at all. Thank you for watching. We will report this space from the ground in UP. In the meantime, see you tomorrow, same time. Goodbye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.